All right, I think we're live. Let me go ahead and check on here.
Testing.
Yep, we're live on Twitter, at least. I don't know where to
Hey,
see
as
if
we're
we're live
getting
on.
logged on, I think between Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, we had well over 300 listens on the last podcast. So, or at
Got
least views, whatever they consider to be a view, I guess.
got Facebook going, and let's see. And it looks like we're live on YouTube. So let me just share that on the Twitter. All right, so we're just gonna, now that we have it all live, we're just gonna jump on in. So, hey everybody, this is Joe Langworthy and my co-host Thomas Woelfel with episode 32 of Tailgate Talk, a 6-column sports podcast. So, obviously, it's been bye week for Mizzou football, so nothing really to review, but always good to not lose a game. Go undefeated on the weekend,
Hey,
and
undefeated. Yep.
nothing. I knock on wood, but it sounds like I didn't hear of any arrests, which is always a good thing on the bye week. So, came out healthy from the bye week. But so we thought we'd have a little live episode and talk about, some recruiting. I think when we were planning this, we were planning on a little bit better news that we could talk about with Mizzou football recruiting, but I think there's still a lot of good things to talk about, especially basketball. So we'll talk about basketball recruiting as well as football recruiting, and then basketball season starts a week from tomorrow. So it's time to start talking about the round ball. So but yeah, Wednesday was the Ryan Wingo day, and that did not go the way we wanted it to go. What were your
To say the least.
what were your thoughts on that one? Were you following that day of, Thomas?
A little bit. I know going into it, all the word. I think everybody and their mother on all these major sites, Rivals, 24/7. Everyone was putting in their future cast on Monday for Wingo to Mizzou, and then come Wednesday morning, there were, I guess, whispers that maybe that was premature. And to be honest with you, the whole way it came down, it feels almost like Wingo was doing his best to play heel the whole time. I mean, they canceled trips to other schools to go to the last two Mizzou home games, just to, get everybody at this, at SLU High. They were cheering him on, expecting him to, grab the black and gold Mizzou hat, and he didn't. So, it could turn out very well for him if he goes to Tennessee, or if he goes to Texas and plays well and comes to Faroe in a few years and plays well. But also, our fans will certainly remember everything that went down if he comes to Mizzou in a couple of years and lays an egg, and we're able to beat Texas whenever that time comes. But yeah, it was a roller coaster for sure.
Yeah. He's tried to downplay it since, but the rumors that he was inviting Mizzou commits to his commitment ceremony doesn't make him look the best.
No.
I understand he probably really did think he was going to commit to Mizzou when he did that, if he did that. And high school kids are famous for not really thinking things through. So I'll give him a little bit of grace on that one, but not a great look if that really happened for him to just turn around and pick Texas. And I think we've all seen his dad's comments to Frank Cusimano later that day, and Dad basically said, it's not over till he signs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's just a deal where, I mean, look, and he's got to do what he's best for him. He's, what he thinks his football career is, or whatever it may be. And you're not going to fault a high school kid, even if he did screw over Mizzou recruits just to, make them look bad. But I think it's very clear that I would guess that his dad has a heavy hand in where he goes to school, and I would also guess that money talks and BS walks with that recruiting. And I would guess that probably Texas came in with a higher offer. And I mean, by the sounds of it, the dad said, hey, if you can beat them, then we could change our minds. So, to me, that's it's, I mean, now you can say that out loud. It's always happened. But now it's above board, so to speak. So you see kind of the greasiness of recruiting, but you see it very publicly this, in a situation like this. So, it's probably a little bit unfortunate, just from the kid, from Wingo's perspective, because obviously I'm sure he's getting advice from a lot of different people, and I'm sure some of them have his best interest in mind, and I would bet that probably some don't. And maybe Texas is the best choice for him, but I definitely think probably the way it went about was obviously not ideal. And then having your dad go to local news sources and just blatantly saying, hey, if we get a higher offer, we'll change our mind, is not something that a PR person would tell you to do. So even if that's what you're doing behind the scenes, that's not what you should be, laying out there. So
and I think I agree with Gabe DeArmond, who said that his opinion on it is basically, if Ryan Wingo comes crawling back and says, yeah, I want to come to Mizzou, yeah, you take him. He's that kind of talent. You make room for him, but you don't spend a whole lot of resources in the meantime.
No,
you don't spend a whole lot of time trying to flip him. Because
I think at this point they've made it clear it's a lot more about the paycheck than the relationships, based on what the coach said. So if you have a higher offer, then you reach out and say, here's our offer. But like you said, I don't think you spend 2 hours every day getting them on the phone trying to recruit them, because it's clear that is second to the amount of money he can make, which is that's his choice. I'm not saying
he knows what our offer is and what we bring to the table. So it's one of those. If he wants to come back to the table, sure, 100%. But he's committed somewhere else, and it doesn't really seem like it's the type of commitment that is going to be won over, like you said, by furthering the relationship. So don't, I don't want to say act like we're better than trying to get him to flip. We're not, but it comes a time where you got to decide where your resources go. And I think it's better spent on transfers and on, somebody else that might flip because of the relationship more than a guy like him. So
or you take that money that you had for him and use that as a way to sway recruits that maybe are on the fence or have committed other places, like maybe Ohio State, out of the same city of Missouri or St. Louis, and get them to me. But I mean, at this point, it almost seems like it was not that much different than bidding on a house, in terms of you just put your best and final offer in, and if it's not good enough, then you just kind of move on. That's the feeling you get after kind of reading the rundown of how everything kind of happened and what's happened since.
Right. And, for Missouri as a whole, I think we really wish that we had got him. It would have helped our recruiting ranking and everything, but I think we still got to remember we have the number 3 player in the country committed,
who's higher ranked
than him. We have some studs coming in still. I think our recruiting ranking on Rivals right now is 45th, and I think that's really hurt by the fact that we only have 15 commitments. So it's kind of one of those, I think you've told me that you've looked at it, and I haven't run the numbers or anything, but that there's only 12 guys that are absolutely gone after this year. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think actually Rivals has a rundown, and I'm sure it's not perfect, but there's only I believe there's only 12 players left, or not 12 players left, but there are 12 players on the current roster who are currently in their last year of eligibility. That can kind of be, to be fair, that could be a moving target with COVID years and injury years and redshirt years and all of that. But
right.
There's 12 guys on the current roster using their last year of eligibility. You're going to have probably, I think probably a small handful go pro. I mean, I'd be shocked if Hopper came back. I think KAD at this point has probably improved his draft stock enough to where that makes sense for him to return. I thought for a while Rakestraw was on that path, but he's gotten bit a little bit by the injury bug, so that might kind of change the equation a little bit. But he's potentially in that boat. And we have a couple other defensive backs that could also, take off for the NFL as well. And then you've got obviously, I mean, in today's world, I just don't see how you can go into an offseason not anticipating probably 10 to 12 kids in the transfer portal. So
right.
When you do the math, I think we're probably going to have to come up with probably 30 kids total. But 8 or 10 of those are going to be transfers.
Right. So you're really only looking at 5 to 7 more high school kids.
Yeah. I think you got to be sitting there. I think you're going to be a little bit picky. You're going to grab a kid maybe that's below the radar. If you can get someone to flip from a different school that you're excited about, you do that. I know the offensive linemen, I think they probably want some more offensive line help in this recruiting class. I know there's a kid that was committed to Illinois that visited Missouri and then decommitted to Illinois. He hasn't made a decision yet, but something like that, a situation like that, I think is probably how you get to your 20, 22, somewhere in there. And then, and then you're looking at transfers. And the other thing too to think about is, the coaching staff at this point in time, they've probably got a pretty good idea of, hey, here's 5, 6 kids that we are confident are probably going to hit the portal, and they're going to be very interested in Missouri. And that those conversations are already starting to happen, whether it's directly with the parents, which is technically against the rules, but definitely you can have fairly legal conversations with, the kid's high school coach. Maybe he's a freshman in college now. You talk to the high school coach and let him know there's interest, and he hits the portal and all of a sudden he's committed. Those type of things have already started, I'm sure. And kind of how the year's gone, I think, is probably helpful. So I would guess we'll probably have 8 to 10 kids come in. I wouldn't be surprised if they're young dudes that maybe picked other schools over Missouri, realized they're going to have to wait longer for playing time than they realized, or maybe just want to be closer to home. They get their free transfer. And I think those are the type of
realize the school they're going to doesn't actually utilize their wide receivers very well.
There you go. Yeah, you transfer to a place like Georgia and don't get used. If there was maybe a kid out of East St. Louis that went to Alabama and is an offensive lineman and turns around and looks and sees his hometown school extremely competitive, maybe he says, all right, well, I can go home and win just as many football games and get on the field quicker. Maybe it makes more sense. So yeah, I think you'll see a lot of that, but I think the staff has to get the current class to like 20 kids. I would say probably 20, 22 players, and then hit the portal hard.
Right. And I mean, I think that in this transfer portal era, one of the things that, I mean, you've kind of talked about it a little bit there, where we are going to expect 10 kids to at least to transfer out. One of the things that I think has to be taken into consideration with recruiting is recruiting your own kids. I mean, recruiting trying to think of a kid who's not really getting as much time as he probably thinks he should get. Like a Jamarian Wayne who's sitting, not playing a ton. Joshua Manning, who came in with a lot of hype in the wide receiver room, and he's playing, but he's not playing a ton. You know, keeping those kids here is the same as getting one of those kids in the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know,
Right.
a lot of those battles I feel like we don't even see,
Right.
and we won't see because, like you said, those things are happening behind the scenes with high school coaches getting, hey, you know, what would it take to get Josh Manning to Nebraska? You know, those kind of conversations are happening, and if we keep him happy, and I don't want to say I'm using Josh Manning as a complete hypothetical. I have no inside knowledge that, you know, he's just the first guy that came to mind, but we don't see that kind of stuff happening, and we don't see that as a victory. But I think that's one of the kind of the underrated aspects of, this is going to sound weird, but hiring an offensive coordinator, because it allows Drink to take that off his plate and he can just recruit. He spends so much of his time recruiting the 85 guys that are over there in the facility.
Yeah.
Plus recruiting for next year. So, you know, if we can, one of the ways we can get to that number is making it so that only 3 guys transfer out, you know? And so that's kind of the numbers game, like you said. And, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. You know, that kind of hits the mainstream, or hits the stride in December, I think, is when the portal opens. When they're
it's after your last
actually,
game, after your last regular season game, you'll start hearing names. I think the portal might be like December 1st or something, but you'll start seeing information as soon as the final weekend is over, for sure.
Yeah. And so we don't really, we've kind of alluded to it. We don't really know what the numbers are going to be. But I do think that you're right, that we do probably need to add somewhere in the range of 4 to 7 more high school kids to this class, at least. And, you know, like you said, I think some of these kids that committed last year to other programs and are freshmen, that'll be interesting. I'd almost count those as high school recruits.
They got 4 years of eligibility left,
but they've got a lot of eligibility left. And then you start looking at other things like, you know, Michigan might be in some trouble. There's a in-state recruit committed to Michigan, Andrew Sprague, over in Kansas City. If Harbaugh's not there, does he open things back up? And that would help with the offensive line. So there are a lot of options, and I think there's a lot of good things going on right now, and we're winning games, and then I think Drake's going to be able to sell that to recruits. So, but I also think that it's almost too late in this cycle to sell that success to these kids. I think where you see that is going to be more in the next couple years, because you can't just develop those relationships overnight. And as much as we as fans want to think it's just, you know, winning solves everything, winning really, really helps, but winning doesn't solve everything. These kids, I mean, obviously these kids care about more than just winning, or else nobody would go anywhere other than Alabama. And, you know, we've got the number 3 player in the country, and he committed before we were 7-1. So, you know, there's other things that factor in, but it is good to win, and it's good to sell that success to these future classes and to the transfers. Honestly, the transfers is where it could really help. Hey, we're 9-3 or whatever we end up. Come help us beat 11-1, 12-0.
You're exactly right. And I mean, I'm sure there were kids that committed to other places because they got told you can't win at Missouri. Now we're winning. Maybe they're not playing. They want to come. They're interested in Missouri again. Like you said, you got to recruit the current roster, all 85 guys. I think that we do have a little bit of an advantage there. I know you mentioned the wide receivers, but I mean, there's not a better example than Dominic Lovett. And of course, I say this, and he'll pop 150 yards receiving on us this week, but
Right.
or this upcoming Saturday. But I mean, he's gone there and he's not seen much of the ball, and so you have a guy on our team like Marquise Johnson, who's probably getting information fed to him that I think he's from Texas. I'm sure A&M would love to have him. I'm sure Texas, they might not have spent quite as much time recruiting him. Now he's getting meaningful playing time for a 7-1 Missouri team. He's going to go to coach, and Drinkwitz can say, we got a plan to use you. Here's how we're going to do it. Look at what we've done with Burden, and look at the player that left. You got to trust us and know you're going to continue to improve. So I think that can also be to Drinkwitz's advantage is recent, because if it happened 10 years ago, the kid's not going to care. But if it happened 12 months ago, then that's going to be something that kid's going to remember and is going to, it's going to stick in his brain, and he's going to keep that in mind, I'm sure. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Burden is a great recruiting tool for the internal wide receivers for sure, because it's like, hey, if you continue working hard, look at what Luther's doing.
Right.
If you emulate him.
Right. One kid left, one kid stayed. Which one do you want to be like? The kid at Georgia with, 240 receiving yards?
Who you already have more yards than. And
Right. You're already outperforming. Or do you want to be the one here who's already a unanimous preseason All-American as a sophomore, staring down he'll be a first-round pick if he stays healthy after next year. Almost guaranteed. So, yeah, I mean, I think that all comes into play.
Right. So, so it'll be interesting next couple of months, but I think there's a lot to be excited about, even with the kind of kick in the pants that was Wednesday from Ryan Wingo. But I think we're okay, and I think moving in the right direction overall.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
Things were going too well with Missouri football. It was actually kind of nice to have a speed bump, because it feels like, all right, we got that out of the way. Now let's get back to winning football.
It was an
games,
off the field speed bump. We maybe the on field performances won't have those hiccups, because we're getting out of the way off the field.
There you go.
But yeah, so I think that's that's enough for football. Let's talk some basketball. We haven't done that yet. But basketball, like I said, starts a week from Monday. It starts November 6th. The Arkansas Pine Bluff. What is Arkansas Pine Bluff? What is their
mascot? I have no idea. They have a logo that looks like a lion or fire or something. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, they're coming to town. Always a.
They do have a basketball team.
They do have a basketball team. Always a scary matchup that I bet we win by 30. Although I say that and jinx us. But yeah, so basketball season tips off November 6th, 7 p.m., Mizzou Arena. Should hopefully be more of a warm-up game on that Monday, but then Memphis comes to town Friday, so November 10th. So season kind of ramps up real quick there. Not much breathing room. And it's, I think we're playing a pretty formidable non-conference schedule, because we got Memphis that Friday, and then we play SIU Edwardsville, but then we go to Minnesota. And then Jacksonville State, South Carolina State, Loyola, Maryland, Pittsburgh, Wichita State, the Beakers of KU, Seton Hall, Illinois, Central Arkansas. So Gates did not schedule the cupcake, round table like he did last year. This is not an easy non-conference schedule. What are you thinking about that?
Well, I was really surprised by that, honestly. I know Charlton Young, I think, our assistant coach, had an interview going into last year, and he made a comment about the schedule, and it was kind of along the lines of course, he was trying to say that they put together a really tough schedule last year, which, if you paid any attention, you knew that wasn't the case. But, his comments were basically that you can tell how confident a coach is in their team based on the toughness of a non-conference schedule. And for I guess the folks listening that don't know, is football, those contracts are done 10 years in advance. Basketball, you tend to have 2 to 3 games each year that those contracts are, further out into the future. Like
So for us, KU and Illinois.
And Illinois, right. But then everything else, and then I guess also the crossover game with the ACC or whoever, I think it's Pitt this year, right? But you can get a pretty good idea of how confident a coach is going to be in their team based on those other non-conference games. And I think you mentioned Minnesota. Obviously, they're playing Memphis in the second game of the year. Wichita State's no slouch. Seton Hall is they can be very competitive. So it's a much tougher schedule than I would have guessed for a second-year coach that has as many transfers. I mean, obviously, he came into a situation where you just knew the first 2 to 3 years he was going to have a high volume of transfers in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough to put together a team like that. But I would say, based on the schedule, he's got some confidence in his guys. So I'm still trying to tamper expectations a little bit, just because it is his second year. He had a great first year. We've seen this with our last coach, and the second year was not near as good as the first one. But, I think this is a team with pieces, and there's no reason why, come early March, we aren't sitting there saying, hey, we have a legitimate shot at the NCAA tournament again this year. And
right.
Everyone wants to win a national championship. But before you can do that, you've got to start by making the NCAA tournament every year. So we'll see. It's an interesting schedule for sure.
Yeah, I think it shows. I do think I agree that the talent level, the baseline of the talent level has went up. Obviously I don't think it's quite as top heavy. I don't think there's a top, a first round pick on this team like we had with Kobe Brown last year, but
at least not right now.
I mean, I think some of the freshmen, I think Aiden Shaw has that ability.
Trent Pierce could potentially be that.
Right. But nobody coming in that we are thinking is a first round pick in this next year's draft at the moment. But I do think that, you look at where some of these kids came from, some of the transfers. We have Connor Vanover, who went to Arkansas, played there for a long time, played at Oral Roberts this past year. We have Iowa State transfer Caleb Grill. We have Colorado State transfer John Tanji. I'll learn how to say his name on Monday when the PA announcer says it. And so my apologies if that was wrong. We will correct that. But, just looking at where they came from, Tamar Bates, who, was at Indiana. I think was he the one that was at, did he go to K-State first?
Right. I don't know for sure.
Or did he just go to, Indiana. But he's from Kansas City. That's what I was thinking. But, Indiana, Colorado State, Arkansas / Oral Roberts.
They're coming from Power
Iowa
5
State.
programs.
They're coming from better programs. Last year it was, I think, Milwaukee. Nothing against Dre Golston, but Milwaukee. I didn't know that there was a Milwaukee University.
Right, Northwestern or not Northwestern,
Northern Iowa. And I guess Nick Honor was from Clemson, so that was a Power 5. But and then Cleveland State. You're looking at that and you're like, they're D1 at least, I guess. But and these aren't kids that were riding the bench, not ever playing. Obviously, none of them were really stars. None of them were lighting up the scoreboard for 30 points a game or anything, but they were all playing a lot at these schools. And so just the overall talent level has went up. And then, we retained Noah Carter, Sean East, Aiden Shaw. And I think those are 3 very talented, and Nick Honor, I keep forgetting him. 4 really talented kids that I think can provide some leadership. And in Aiden Shaw's case, some explosiveness and some potential that I think is dangerous, to say the least.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, it's definitely a higher level of talent than we had last year, I think. And obviously, a big portion of that's going to be how it comes together. And I mean, the other thing you got to think about is, we say coming into this year we don't have a first round pick. Well, guess what? Coming into last year, we also didn't have a first round pick, and
that is true.
It turned out that Kobe Brown was developed into a first round pick. And now, obviously, he had improved each year. He was headed in the right direction, but he took a massive step forward when Dennis Gates and his coaching staff got on campus. And so, I would not be at all shocked if there's a kid on this roster that we're sitting there saying, "Oh, he's talented," or he's looked good, that shows up and this is, you're looking at him and say, this guy's kicked it into a totally different gear. The way he's built his schedule, as we just talked, kind of tells me that might be the case with someone. Maybe it pans out, maybe it doesn't. But I wouldn't be surprised if we get, 3 or 4 games in and say, this is not the same Noah Carter that we watched play last year. Or, dude, this Trent Pierce kid that is a freshman, he is a lot better than anybody thought. I would not be at all surprised if we have one of those guys on this roster that by the end of the year, I'm not saying he'll be a first round pick, but is knocking on the door and looking like an NBA player. So
right. And as solid as, Noah Carter, Nick Honor, Sean East were last year, if they take a step, all 3 of them take steps up in their game,
right,
that's going to be huge for this team. I think kind of the talk around town kind of centers on kind of two returners and 1 new kid. And that's it's talking about Sean East. Well, I guess it's 3 kids, 3 returners. Sean East and Aiden Shaw are the 2 that everybody is saying have made huge jumps and are going to be really good. Dennis Gates is talking a lot about Caleb Brown, which I have no idea what to expect there. I don't know if he's blowing smoke or if something's real, but it seems like every time Dennis Gates talks, he talks about Caleb Brown. So we'll see what that's all about. And then Trent Pierce, who you have mentioned, freshman coming in. I think the quote that's going around is a coach is quoted as saying he's not going to be here
for 4 years.
Yeah. Meaning he's a pro and going to go to the league a lot sooner than I think a lot of people would think. But so I think influx of young talent like that between Trent Pierce, Jordan Butler, who is 7 foot tall, which is always good to have, and then Anthony Robinson. I'm going to mess that up a bunch, just FYI. If I'm talking about Anthony Robertson, I mean Anthony Robinson, just FYI. And I think those are 3 really talented kids coming in. So hopefully they don't have to play a ton and they can develop this year. But always good to see freshmen coming in and that other people wanted, I should say.
Yeah, that's a step in the right direction. That you out recruited people instead of kids kind of fell in your lap. So
right.
Yeah, we'll see what they got. Like you said, I don't think the first game we're going to know a whole lot, but we're going to figure out pretty quickly what type of team we have and how far we have to go when Memphis plays. I mean, they're not typically elite, but they do have top talent, and can be definitely tough to play against. So
right. So yeah, we'll I think we're going to talk more about basketball just kind of as it happens, especially this non-conference season while football's still going on, because it is the SEC, so football is still king. We're still going to be more focused on football while it's happening, but there's only about a month of that while it's really solidly going on both at the same time. So But we'll talk more about the basketball team as it happens, and who's surprising us, and kind of review games, maybe even preview a few of the bigger games before they happen. I don't really expect us to give much of an Arkansas Pine Bluff preview, but we might preview the Memphis game a little bit in between. But I do want to talk a little bit. We talked about football recruiting. Let's talk about basketball recruiting, because it is the number one class in the country right now, the 2024 class.
When was the last time you could say that?
I don't remember ever being able to say that. So maybe at one point there was a time where we had some kid committed and we were the only team that had a kid committed, but I don't even think that's true. So so right now we have 5 commits. Trent Burns from Houston, 7'2" center, 4-star, not bad. We have Anor Boateng, another one whose name I'm not going to know how to pronounce until the PA guy says it, from Little Rock, Arkansas. And Arkansas did want him. I want that on the record. They're acting like they didn't really want him and they wanted to let him go, but you don't.
The kid, he's top 50 in the country.
Yeah, he's like top 22. And he's from Arkansas. Arkansas absolutely wanted him.
Yeah,
but it was one of those ones where they knew we were getting him, so they were like, "Nah, we don't want him anymore."
Yeah, if they had 5 kids committed that were top, if they had five in the top 15 committed, I'd say, okay, well maybe they didn't want him, but
right.
Right.
I don't know if he would be the top kid in their class right now,
up there.
But I'm not sure he wouldn't be. So yeah, he is by far the star of the class at this point. But the fact that there's not much drop off between him and the other 5 guys. The other guys are Peyton Marshall, who is just a giant human being. I think he was committed to Auburn for a while. He's from Georgia. I think it's the Atlanta area. 6'10", 305. So just a monster inside. And he is very much a back to the basket traditional center.
Yeah, he's going to show up on campus at that size, and you're going to see Drinkwitz on the sideline, and he might not be there for fun. He might be there trying to recruit the kid to the football field.
Think how good you'd be as a left tackle there, Peyton. But this is a tangent, but my dad and I talk about this every time a kid like that commits to the basketball team. Why not put him in a football uniform and have him go out there on field goal block and just stand there? Just right in the middle.
Yeah, or if he can move a little bit, let him play tight end.
Right.
And let him take 5 steps and turn around and just kind of lob the ball up there.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know.
It's something I would do. At least on the high school level. Just if I was a high school coach, no risk of injury. I'm not going to put you in unless we're within 3 yards of the end zone and on field goal block.
Right.
You don't even have to come to practice. You come to practice 1 time a week for a little bit of a walkthrough, and we'll show you how to put the pads on.
There you go. Well, that might be the biggest problem. Finding
pads that fit. Yeah. But sorry that I'm off that tangent now. Marcus Allen, who is a 6'7" forward, 4-star. I think he's going to be really good. Really strong looking kid. So I think he's going to end up being a steal of this class. I don't know why I really think that. I'm not a basketball, I don't know basketball that well, but just watching his film, I just think he's got a lot to like about him. And then Antonio Barrett, I think they call him T.O. Barrett from Oklahoma. When you get a kid from Oklahoma that has an Oklahoma offer, even in basketball, that's pretty big deal. He is the lowest rated commit in the class, but he's still a top 150 kid. So 4-star on a lot of recruiting services and 3-star on Rivals, but top 150 on basically everything. So really good class. And then there's another kid whose name I'm going to butcher. Jaden Quaintance. however you say his name. Haven't heard. He was at Kentucky this weekend. Have you heard anything? You
I
have
haven't
some
heard anything
more
on
Kentucky connections
No,
than I do, but
I know that Kentucky, I think, only has one kid committed at this point in time, and the rumor is that they aren't in love with a ton of the players in that class. So, it sounded like they were going to probably try to find 2 or 3 kids and then hit the portal. There's also rumors that if Kentucky has a massive year, that they might, that Coach Cal, might call it quits. I'm not.
right
Don't
off
put me
into
on
the
record
sunset.
Don't put me on record on that. But they've got a kid that's on the team. He was a top kid in the class this past year, or in the class that's going to be on campus starting now. He was friends with the dude's dad, and they almost made it sound like he's kind of been eyeballing that as a potential last year, just given kind of the relationship, I guess, with that family that the coaching staff had, and obviously they were able to build a top recruiting class around it. So, I mean, obviously that would throw a major wrench in the works if he were to retire after the season, but I wouldn't count that out, just given I think they've got 1 kid committed, and he's known for bringing in 5 stars every year. That's
Right.
to me is that's something to note, is that, hey, they've only got 1 kid committed. They don't seem to be aggressively going after, top kids in the class, and Coach Cal's getting up there in age, and he's made plenty of money. So who knows? But yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it in the summer, actually. I think at the time they had three kids committed, I want to say. And we just kind of said, they're in a really good spot. They're probably going to just go after big names, and if they can land them, great. If not, they'll hit the portal. And since then, they landed Boateng, who is a potential one and done. I think that's not a guarantee, but it's definitely a possibility.
He's borderline at this point, but yeah,
he's going to have an opportunity
kind of
at whether it's 1 or 2 years. They added the center after that, 7'2" kid that had a lot of interest from a number of different schools. And then, like you said, there's one other kid, Quentin's, I don't even know how to say his name, but it's
down to us, Kentucky, and the G League.
Right. He's a top 10 kid. So they've done basically what we said is, hey, they've got 3 guys, and now they're going to go after the best of the best. And they've actually landed 2 of them. And that's why they're the top ranked recruiting class in the country. And, obviously basketball is a little different, just because sometimes you're going to have 3 kids committed, other times you're going to have 5, and that sways the rankings quite a bit. But
right.
I mean, this is not a situation where we've got 8 kids committed that can't play. We've got 2 or 3 kids that will definitely be able to play right away, and then a couple others that within a year or 2 should be able to contribute heavily. So it's definitely a recruiting class to be excited about. And if they land this last kid, then I mean, I think we better make sure we've got a contract ready to go for our coach, because otherwise he'll be he'll be shopping around, or get shopped around, I guess, by his agent.
Right. So a lot of things to be excited about right now. Like you said, I think it was good to kind of get the obligatory kick in the pants out of the way, because everything else seems to be going so great right now. But yeah, excited that basketball is starting back up. Excited that football is where it's at. And any final thoughts before we wrap up? And
hey, it's been 10 years since we've been this far into the season and not already looking forward to basketball season. And doesn't have anything to do with the basketball team. It has everything to do with the football team. So, I think
it's like I'm over the moon excited about basketball, but I can't let myself even really think about it yet, because it's still football season.
Yeah. I mean, and if, depending on how things go this weekend, we might be thinking about football into December. So I'm not necessarily saying that's the most likely scenario, but it's possible. And
well, that's a good teaser for our Wednesday show. We're going to do another live show Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time. If you're listening on the East Coast like Thomas, it'll be 7. I've had to do that math a couple times. Real difficult math, but
it's not
yeah. So Wednesday, 6 p.m. we're going to be back on it. It'll be just a football episode. Obviously, we have probably the biggest game of the year so far. We keep saying that, but going to Georgia, playing the number 1 team in the country. So we're CBS game of the week. It's going to be awesome. And we're going to preview that. We'll have, pretty full coverage of that on Wednesday, 6 p.m. Again, live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. We have them all set up to go. So wherever you listen live, just plan to be, on your phone, on your computer, however you want to do that. Tell your wife you're, pooping or whatever, and go in the bathroom and listen. However you can get away from your responsibilities to listen to us, make it happen. Wednesday, 6 p.m. Be there. But yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the site. If you do support the site, if you don't, like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. Even if you don't use your Facebook, follow us on Facebook so that your parents see it, because your parents use Facebook, and their like is just as cool to us as yours is. So follow us, share our stuff. That's my plug to everybody. Shout out to 573 Tees. I'm wearing the Hawk Hunt shirt.
There you go.
Big deal. He retweeted us almost immediately on Twitter, so gotta give him a shout out. Love that guy. Yeah, so that is episode 32 of Tailgate Talk, a Six Column Sports podcast. Like I said, we'll be back Wednesday, November 1st. I will be clean shaven that day. So, and I'll explain that. I'll explain that day of. So you'll want to tune in just to learn about that. But thanks for listening. MIZ.
ZOU.